Get ready, you lying crook. Those were the chilling words allegedly sent to Chief of Staff of suspended Minister Senzo Mkhunu, not by a criminal syndicate, but instead allegedly by controversial forensic investigator as well as criminal activist Paul O Sullivan. And now Parliament and South Africa is in an uproar. In a dramatic moment at the National Parliamentary Inquiry into the explosive allegations made by KZN Police Commissioner General Mkhwanazi, Cedric Nkabende shocked the room when he requested permission to read a message that he claims was sent to him by Paul O Sullivan during the proceedings. The message allegedly also warned, "I'm going to make sure you spend some years in prison. You were bribed by Mkhwanazi and Mapula." A direct threat, a serious allegation, and one that could carry jail time under South Africa's Power, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament Act, a law that criminalizes intimidation of witnesses before Parliament. Now, MPs across the political spectrum are demanding action, from calls to criminal charges to warnings South Africa must not become a mafia state, to renewed claims that this is not the first time Paul O Sullivan has allegedly intimidated officials. The inquiry has just escalated from political drama into full-blown constitutional crisis. And the question is this accountability or intimidation at the highest level? And if powerful people can allegedly threaten witnesses in Parliament, who is really running the show? Today, we are going to get into the controversial figure who is going to be appearing before the ad hoc committee sometime, we're not too sure when, Paul O Sullivan. And we are going to get into it. So get your favorite beverage and remember to like and subscribe. And additionally, members, they get videos sooner and memberships contribute towards the plant fund behind me. From an alleged threat sent to someone who was testifying in front of Parliament, to a beef with General Mkhwanazi that has resulted in a defamation suit, as well as a beef against Action SA, we are going to get into everything, including that alleged secret meeting that happened inside of Radovan Kretsch's ex-house. Things are going to get wild. But firstly, we have to talk a little bit about who Paul O Sullivan is. So before his name was whispered in parliamentary corridors, before MPs accused him of intimidation, before his messages allegedly triggered outrage inside South Africa's highest democratic institution, you need to understand one thing. Paul O Sullivan is not just another activist. Born in Dublin in 1953, O Sullivan later moved to South Africa in the 1980s and quickly carved out a reputation as a relentless forensic investigation and anti-corruption crusader who made powerful enemies at the very top of the state. For decades, he has positioned himself as a watchdog of the criminal justice system, relentlessly pursuing senior police officials he claims are corrupt, often taking on figures that many people consider untouchable. In 2003, while serving on the board of Airports Company South Africa, O Sullivan opened a case against then National Police Minister Jackie Selebi. Remember him? His investigator contributed to the shocking revelation that Selebe was allegedly on the payroll of substance trafficker Glenn Angliotti. Years later, Selebe was convicted and sentenced to 15 years in prison, a case that cemented O Sullivan's reputation as a man willing to take on the highest office in the SAPS. In 2012, he again launched criminal dockets, this time against crime intelligence boss Richard Mdluli, who we talk a lot about on this channel. Remember his relation to Nathi Mtethwa, and senior MPA officials. All would later face suspensions and removals, and Mdluli ultimately convicted on unrelated charges. He was also instrumental on Radovan Kretsch of not being granted political asylum in South Africa. He produced an affidavit which indicated a whole lot of things against Radovan Kretsch, because remember, Radovan Kretsch had fled the Czech Republic, where he was wanted there, and instead Paul O Sullivan was basically the person who helped contribute towards that decision by producing this investigation and this affidavit against Kretsch, to the point where when police raided Kretsch's home, they found Paul O Sullivan's name on a hit list along with the prosecutor of people that Kretsch wanted gone. So we got to understand a little bit about the man before we go in to some of the controversies that we're going to be deal with. So supporters of him call him fearless, critics call him reckless, some call him a hero, others call him dangerous. He has appeared in countless public hearings, opened explosive cases, and even faced arrest himself on many occasions, all while remaining one of the most polarizing figures in South Africa's war on corruption. And once again, his name sits in the center of a political firestorm. So the question is no longer just who Paul O Sullivan is, but whether his legacy represents justice or perhaps a line that has finally been crossed. You can decide below, because we are going to be going into everything in this video. Now, according to Paul O Sullivan, and I've listened to many of his interviews, I will clip some of them in here. I will copy the links below where you can go listen to the full interview if you want to get the full picture, to make sure that I haven't been editing anything funny. But basically, the epicenter of this dispute lies within crime intelligence and the notorious Slush Fund. We know about the Slush Fund. It is not widely audited. It is 600 million rand in taxpayer money that is designed for COVID operations, but has been repeatedly being accused of being used for personal gain. Remember, Richard Mdluli was accused of using it, and General Mkhwanazi actually wanted to prosecute him. Remember, in his testimony in front of the Nhlanhla Commission, he wanted to prosecute him, but he was stopped by Nathi Mtethwa, the late Nathi Mtethwa, who interfered. And a key figure in this narrative is also General Khumalo, head of the PKTT, who has been reinstated in crime intelligence, which I think was an amazing decision. Paul O Sullivan basically claims that this fund has long been treated like a personal bank account from those at the top. And he alleges that former crime intelligence boss Richard Mdluli was looting it, that senior officers were using it freely, and that key figures linked to General Mkhwanazi were connected to its operation.
Crime intelligence has become what it was under Richard Mdluli, a family-run business full of nepotism and theft. And crime intelligence is the epitome of the police service in general. And when you have someone like Mkhwanazi, who's heavily involved with Khumalo of crime intelligence, and that's clear from seeing the media release that he did, where he was waxing lyrical about how good Khumalo is, and that Khumalo was project managing this event in Gauteng that resulted in the seizure of Kat Mdlala's cellular phone. What he failed to point out is that Khumalo is a divisional commander of crime intelligence. Crime intelligence should not be involved in any operation whatsoever other than intelligence gathering. So I'm left puzzled as to why Khumalo led an operation to arrest Kat Mdlala. I'm not saying Kat Mdlala shouldn't have been arrested. There's no doubt he should have been arrested. In fact, he should have been arrested several years ago. If crime intelligence were doing their job several years ago, Kat Mdlala would have been arrested long before he or anybody connected to him arranged for the murder of Babita de Karan, the accountant in the health department that flagged the theft by various individuals from Tembisa Hospital. Now, it's the shortcomings in crime intelligence that has helped to bring this country to its knees.
Now, O'Sullivan zeroed into explosive presentation that happened on the 6th of July, the one that was widely circulated to journalists, and he claims that one of the journalists leaked it to him, and he went and he looked at the metadata. That's something I do all the time as well. When someone shares a file with me, I look at when it was created, I look at who the author is in order to, check what's happening with that file. But metadata is something that can be faked. But he claims that this presentation was not even prepared by General Mkhwanazi, and it showed the true author. And to O'Sullivan, the 6th of July was no whistleblower moment. It was a staged event, sort of choreography for something, complete with combat uniforms and heavily armed officers, which he described could perhaps be as intimidatory or arrogant. And this is not a task force. This is a staged show, O'Sullivan argued. And this was about optics and not the truth.
Mkhwanazi himself did not prepare that presentation. the presentation that he put out that day. I know this for a fact, because not only did he put the presentation out that day, his spokesman circulated it to a number of journalists, and one of the journalists shared it with me. And what the clowns that prepared that document forgot to do was to remove the metadata. And the metadata on the document clearly showed me the author of the document and where it was created. Now, it's no coincidence that on the 3rd of July, which was a Thursday before the Sunday, I had attacked Masemola and called for his resignation or dismissal if he did not suspend the 5 generals and 2 brigadiers that had been arrested the previous week. Now, I had opened criminal complaints against the 5 generals and 2 brigadiers, which all rotated. You may recall that you did an interview with me on the 5th of January this year, where I talked about the 29-year-old girl that worked at BMW that was parachuted into crime intelligence in the position of a brigadier. And she had serving police officials at the rank of captain and colonel who had to report to her now, and most of them had 30 or 35 years police experience. They had more police experience than she. And in the case of the 29-year-old brigadier, she's been told you have to wear a uniform now, and you're in charge of visible policing in a part of Pretoria. So you've got a 29-year-old brigadier who previously worked at BMW, never had any police training, never worn a uniform in her life, unless maybe she was in the Girl Guides as a child. And now she's wearing a brigadier's uniform, and she doesn't even know how to salute, to the extent that when one guy saluted her, she saluted with the wrong hand. Now that is what's in charge of the visible policing in a large section of Pretoria. And that leaves me realizing that our police service is in a mess. And it's in a mess and has been in a mess for 25 years.
So firstly, she is not a 29-year-old girl who worked at BMW. She is a 29-year-old woman who is highly qualified with a mechatronics degree. Now, I have a master's degree in biochemistry. I still consider a mechatronics degree harder than what I studied at a master's level, a basic mechatronics degree, because it is extremely complicated. There is a lot of math involved. There is a lot of physics involved. And additionally, she was also studying her way towards her MBA. So this is a highly qualified woman who happened to be working at BMW at the time. And General Khumalo explained his appointment of her at the Nhlanhla Commission. I'll play it for you, but I accept this explanation. And I wonder if Paul O Sullivan listened to that, because repeating this narrative, I've done it before where I've been mistaken about, because you can just see how widely spoken about it is in the media, that it's a 29-year-old BMW employee. Meanwhile, it is a highly qualified woman who was appointed to this role. So listen to it yourself and make up your own mind.
General, let me take you to paragraph 186. That's the paragraph concerning the appointment of Brigadier Mkhwanazi, who used to work for BMW before her appointment. Am I correct that she was appointed directly from BMW?
That is correct.
To be a brigadier in SAPS?
That is correct, Commissioner.
What were the advertised requirements for the position?
We were looking for the head of our technical support services. Without detailing it that much, so as we don't expose our covert methodologies, but it's a person, firstly, who's qualified in mechatronics, a person who can combine both mechanical engineering and electronical engineering to suit our covert activities needs. So those people are normally found then in these environments like BMW or Ford because they are doing both electronical and mechanical engineering or qualified and they have experience.
Was she based at the manufacturing plant, not at a dealership?
I cannot be able to be quite sure in terms of the separation, but what I know is she was a supervisor of technicians that are doing mechanical and electronic work in the manufacturing part of the car.
And so do you say that she met the advertised requirements?
According to us as the panel that recommended her as candidate number one, she did meet all the requirements.
Thank you, General.
And the appointee was given the status of a brigadier, which is, as I understand it from the rankings, fairly senior. And would it be, can you explain how somebody from outside of the police service with no experience in policing would be brought into the service and given a fairly senior rank from the outset?
I won't be long on that. I'll first refer to my response when the commissioner asked as to what were we looking for. We were looking for a qualified mechatronics person, not a police officer like me. My experience and qualifications were irrelevant to the post. So we first advertised the post internally, and then the process moved on until the panel by then could not find a suitable candidate, which is a policy within SAPS. And then that panel recommended for the post to be advertised externally, so as then we can get people that are qualified for the work that for the person that you are looking for. That's how then once the post is externally advertised, it's not only limited to brigadiers and generals. There are posts that are advertised on newspapers of a qualified Reverend Muruti. And those people then, because we are not Barutis, police officers, then a Muruti who's qualified and registered with a particular Baruti organization then will apply and qualify, come in and be given that rank that was advertised. So in the police, it's not something that does not happen. We have a lot of senior officers that came in from the level of a brigadier. Some, they came in from a level of a major general. Not, or maybe let me make one example, the living example. The current divisional commissioner at the level of a lieutenant general, who is a lieutenant general, is from the National Treasurer Department. 2 years ago was appointed by SAPS as a divisional commissioner, who is a lieutenant general. It's another fresh example that we can see, because SAPS was looking for particular qualifications and experience that SAPS could not find within.
So the Lieutenant General you are referring to had no policing background whatsoever?
Not at all. He was, I think, after 2 years of being employed, he was then sent to a basic police training, which is normally not for like a full period, because you are called a lateral entry level and you are a senior officer. So you will just go there and get the basics so as you are able to know how to salute.
So this post was advertised at the level of a brigadier?
Of a brigadier, yes.
Now, according to O'Sullivan, roots of this conflict stretch back to 2011 and 2012, when crime intelligence, basically Richard Mdluli was running it. And remember, he has been accused of stealing money from the slush funds. He was previously suspended, as well as Jackie Selebi was also suspended at the time over a lease scandal. And during this time, Mkhwanazi was appointed as acting commissioner, and Masemola became the acting head of crime intelligence. And according to Paul O'Sullivan, the crime intelligence budget at that time was about 98 million, and no proper audits were conducted. We know this is something that Mary de Haas has complained about as well with the PKTT and crime intelligence, about the lack of auditing and the massive resources. And with the financial year nearing its end, the alleged conversation went like this between General Mkhwanazi and Fannie Masemola, and we've only spent 60 million, we need to spend the rest. And what follows, O'Sullivan claims, was a 35 million rand spending spree on luxury vehicles.
Was suspended, and they appointed an acting commissioner of police. And that was a fellow by the name of Mkhwanazi. So he was now acting commissioner of police. At the same time, Mkhwanazi appointed Masemola, who's now the chief of police. He appointed Masemola as the acting head of crime intelligence. Now, in those days, the crime intelligence slush fund budget was 98 million rand per annum. Now, that means there's a secret services account where they can spend money on stuff which is unaudited. Nobody knows where the money is being spent or how it's being spent, and there's no controls whatsoever. And in 2012, it was 98 million a year. But with all the goings on with Richard Mdluli was so concerned about his own affairs, and because his sidekick, a fellow by the name of Masemola, he had been suspended as well, nobody actually had access to the slush funds. And because of this, by the last month of the year 2012, when the budget of 98 million was about to expire, Masemola suddenly realized, together with Mkhwanazi, that hang on a minute, we've only spent 60 million out of the slush fund this year. We're 38 million rand short. We better spend it, or the money's going to be lost, gone back to Treasury, because that's the way the police budget works. What you don't spend in a year, it goes back to Treasury, and your budget is amended the following year. So what did he do? The pair of them, they went out and bought 35 million rands worth of luxury cars and shared them out amongst the management of the police. Now,
something that Paul O'Sullivan forgot to mention here was that General Mkhwanazi wanted to prosecute Richard Mdluli for this alleged access to the slush fund. Now, we know that this came out in his testimony in front of the Nhlanhla Commission. He basically wanted to prosecute Richard Mdluli, but he was stopped. He was stopped, according to him, by alleged interference by the late Nathi Mtethwa, who stopped him from trying to put this prosecution forward. So this is something that O'Sullivan forgot to mention in his little segment here.
Be charged. She wants to withdraw that letter. So when I ask about why you want to withdraw the letter of a criminal case, you've read the case and you wrote to me and you say, Mdluli must go and face the music. Why do you want to withdraw it? And she said, no. It's my career now in line. So I need to withdraw that. I made a wrong decision. I should not have said Mdluli must be charged. Which means she charged the wrong people in the higher echelon of maybe within the police structures or in government that did not want Mdluli to be charged. And I refused to come back and withdraw the letter. And then I received a phone call from the Minister of Police, Nathi Mtethwa. commissioners. I went to his residence in Waterkloof. And when I arrived there, the Inspector General is sitting on one side of the table, Mr. Mtethwa is sitting on the other side of the table. The minister says to me that I forced the Inspector General of Intelligence to write the letter that says, Mkhwebi is wrong, this matter must go to court. She said, I forced her. Then I told her, I said, no, Minister, Advocate Khateb is an old woman. She's an advocate. How can I point a gun at her and force her to write a letter? Besides, when this letter was written in her office, and she actually is not the author of the letter. The author of the letter is Advocate J. Govender, who is an experienced prosecutor person who's working in that office. She's the one that drafted the letter, not you, not the Inspector General of Intelligence. The minister didn't want to hear any of that. A simple say, must stop prosecuting Mdluli, or must stop disciplinary case against Mdluli. Now, if we talk about political interference, that was the worst I've ever experienced. At that time, Commissioner, I come from the specialized operation. The only thing I know is to chase criminals. And I'm promoted to become the acting National Commissioner, and I'm confronted with this in front of me. And I said, but this is not what I signed for when I joined the police. This can't be right. The minister can't give me these instructions. Then I said to the minister, maybe you brought me into this position and you thought you were going to use me as a pawn because perhaps of my age or whatever, but you are wrong. I'm not going to do that.
We'll say Mkhwanazi is very insensitive, but when we talk the honest truth, we must tell the truth. The country was in pain to listen to how much of money was spent at the former president's house, homestead at Nhlanhla, because there was an accountability that was happening at the time. But this government has never paid attention on the amount of expenditure that was incurred by crime intelligence over years. Interrogate that within the Secret Service account, the misuse of the Secret Service account. Obviously, the Joint Standing Committee is supposed to do that. It's disturbing when reports supposed to be presented to such structures to hold people accountable. Nothing happens to it. We are sitting today, the country is in mourning because we lost one of our ambassadors in France. But then ambassador was a minister of police. As you switch on the television and you watch the homestead of the former minister of police, you're going to see a very big wall, perimeter wall, that was built by the money from crime intelligence. But nobody was held accountable for such, and reports are there. So 2011, we're experiencing all these things. It's members from crime intelligence that takes the money out of crime intelligence to use intelligence that takes the money out of crime intelligence to use them to take control of the executive authority. The minister never asked for the wall. The members from crime intelligence took the money secret fund account to make that wall so they can get control of the minister. So tomorrow they can then loot that money on their own. Then the minister can't say anything. It's the same thing bringing us here today. Minister of Police, Minister Mkhwanazi, was made to sign a letter by the raw people within the organization. They might have done something to him. He signs a letter, he committed himself, and today is in trouble because of that. Had he not signed that letter, he would not have been here. So some of the executive officials or authorities that are arriving in the South African Police Service, they had no bad intentions. But the rogue within catches them. They take control of them, and they do as they please after that.
And then we've got to fast forward to several years where O'Sullivan alleges that General Mkhwanazi and Masemola traveled overseas to visit a police equipment supplier in Germany, specifically to view bulletproof gear. What raised eyebrows was that allegedly returned with them was 2 Louis Vuitton bags described as gifts for their wives, or as he cheekily says, maybe their girlfriends, from the very supplier now implicated in a current corruption case. And O'Sullivan's questions were simple on this podcast. Were these gifts declared? Was the recorded in gift registers? Were customs forms completed? And perhaps more importantly, where are those bags now?
It became apparent then that Mkhwanazi and Masemola were joined at the hip. And the next time I found them together was when they went on an overseas trip with a police supplier to Germany to look at bulletproof equipment. Now, why would you have to have 2 lieutenant generals at taxpayer expense, although I'm not sure if the taxpayer paid for it, it may have been the police supplier, and off they go to Germany in 2016. And when they come back, they've both got beautiful Louis Vuitton bags gifted to them by that police supplier. The same police supplier is on trial today with ex-commissioner, acting commissioner Pashlani for corruption involving hundreds of millions of rand. Now that police supplier then hadn't been charged. Nobody knew he was corrupt except Masemola and Mkhwanazi. They knew he was corrupt. Why did they know? Because they had received bags, Louis Vuitton bags, which retail in this country for between 70 and 100,000 rand. Now, as gifts for their wives. And I asked the question, when you got back to South Africa, Mkhwanazi and Masemola, did you conceal the bags in your luggage, or did you stand at customs and say, listen, I was given this bag, it's worth 3,500 euros. How much tax do I have to pay on it? Customs duty. So they flatly refused to answer the questions as to whether or not they paid any customs duty. The next question is, did they then go to their office and take the gift register and fill in on the gift register that this fellow Kistia had given them a Louis Vuitton bag each for their wives? Did they give the bags to their wives, or did they give them to their girlfriends?
Now, O'Sullivan has repeatedly called for the immediate suspension of top SAPS officials, including General Mkhwanazi, warning that the country is heading towards a repeat of the Jackie Selebi era, the same former commissioner who was convicted of corruption. This is deja vu, he said. We are watching history repeat itself.
They were blind. They didn't realize that they've actually been fooled. You don't get dressed up in combat gear if you're a divisional commissioner or provincial commissioner. You don't dress up in uniform that you used to wear 10 years earlier when you were in the task force. You don't wear uniform you're not entitled to wear and have all these armed troops with masks on behind you. That's a big display. That was meant to psychologically gain an advantage for the citizens and the people in South Africa that could not see that the emperor is not wearing clothes. In fact, they so led by that bravado and that so-called whistleblowing that he did that they completely failed to see through the man. The man is nothing more than a criminal. And what he's been doing is usurping the police service for his own ends. His contract is due to run out soon. It'll be very interesting to see what should happen, because in theory, when his contract runs out, he should be put out to grass. Be very interesting to see whether or not he's going to be put out to grass. What I did notice, and I had his media release transcribed, professionally, properly transcribed, and I've gone through it. And what I did notice, but he makes it clear in that media release that he supports Khumalo. He attacked me in the media release. He didn't mention my name. He said there's a citizen whose name I'm not going to mention who's called for the suspension of these generals in crime intelligence without going through the disciplinary process. Well, excuse me, they were arrested and charged 5 weeks ago, almost 6 weeks ago. Actually, it will be 6 weeks ago tomorrow. Why haven't they been suspended? And he then waxes lyrical about how good Khumalo is. Well, I don't think it's any coincidence that the so-called political killings task team in KZN, groups of them that stay for nights and weeks at a time at the Oyster Box Hotel, where the rooms are 10,000 rand a night, where's all the cash coming from? The money's coming from somewhere for these men to be living these lives of luxury and drive around in luxury cars. And by the way, many of them drive around in a private capacity with their blue lights on. What are they doing exactly? They're living a high life, and the money is coming from, wait for it, the Secret Service's account run by Khumalo, and all now being protected by Mkhwanazi. What's his motive in supporting Khumalo, who belongs in prison?
So I knew nothing about the PKTT before I started covering the Nhlanhla Commission, and from everyone who has been involved in the PKTT, the only person who has anything bad to say about it is Sensor Nkhunu, Mary de Haas, and producer Mshale. Now, we have to think about the motivations behind the reason why those people have something to say about the task team, because we have to remember that this task team is an elite task team. It has prosecutor driven. So like I've said before, you get a prosecutor who tells you what I need to prosecute this case. For example, you have a ballistics expert, you have a forensic expert, behavioral expert, and this is a team that operates as the elite. And you can see it when they got involved. For example, when witness C got involved with witness A and witness B, immediately stuff started getting done. The ballistics report got sent to KZN, and I don't know if perhaps there's a misunderstanding about how the PKTT operates with regards to Paul O Sullivan's understanding of it. But what I do know is I myself consider the PKTT to be a very effective task team. And there is, in my own opinion, a reason why General Khumalo was removed or taken out in that alleged case against that case against him, with the hiring of the BMW employee. Because remember, we talk a lot about this channel that first, if you don't take the bribe, and if you go through the threats, then cases get opened against you. And we also have to speak about the bail conditions that General Khumalo had, because remember, he was not allowed to go back to his offices at Crime Intelligence. And that makes me think someone was trying to keep him away from Crime Intelligence. We've spoken about attorneys on this channel who are still working and are going to their offices, who are accused of SA, I can't say the full word for YouTube, of a child. So at the end of the day, who wanted to keep General Khumalo out? And I'm not too sure if perhaps Paul O Sullivan didn't understand the testimony at the Nhlanhla Commission, or perhaps because this was in August, this was before the commission started. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt. But what we do have to go through is that a lot has come out since. And I'm willing to wait for Paul O Sullivan's version of events when they come out in front of the Nhlanhla Commission and the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Commission. I look forward to it. But in the meantime, allegedly sending threats to people who are testifying and dropping your name in Parliament is not looking good for his image at the moment. Just my own personal opinion.
And then I couldn't understand it until after going public with my allegations as to why Masemola and Mkhwanazi should both be suspended. I had some whistleblowers reach out to me, and they were from KZN, and they made it clear that actually the success rate of the police in KZN is due to the fact that Mkhwanazi has instituted a shoot-to-kill policy, and that when they go to a alleged crime scene or location where they expect to find criminals, they go front and back and shoot everybody on sight, whether they're armed or not. Now, I interviewed and took sworn statements, and then I started doing an analysis. And when I look at the analysis, I find that in the KZN province, 95% of the time, whenever there's an interaction between the police and criminals involving firearms, all of the criminals are fatally wounded. Not one survivor, not one. Now, you call that what you want. I call it extrajudicial killing or murder. And it's been going on since 2020 in KZN, and that's why the people of KZN love Mkhwanazi. But be careful what you wish for, because
Paul O Sullivan substantiates this shoot-to-kill policy by claiming that some whistleblowers allegedly reached out to him from the KZN area. I wonder if one of the names was maybe a Mary de Haas. What do you think? Comment below. And basically that General Mkhwanazi has this shoot to kill policy with criminals. That's why everyone loves him. Now, we got to talk a little bit about General Mkhwanazi versus Paul O Sullivan, because now it has spilled into a major lawsuit. General Mkhwanazi has sued for 5 million rand in defamation, and Paul O Sullivan is countersuing for 10 million rand. To him, this is not just about individuals. This is about systematic decay. And we know that things reached a boiling point when General Mkhwanazi launched a defamation suit against O Sullivan, claiming 5 million rand in damages according for these claims. Now, O'Sullivan's response has been defiant. He stated that the lawsuit was not about protecting reputation, but was about silencing whistleblowers. And he noted that the summons allegedly contained no direct denials of the claims made against him. Remember, O'Sullivan allegedly called Mkhwanazi a crook, only the monetary demand. So to O'Sullivan, he is saying that this is intimidation, and we know that he has launched a 10 million rand countersuit against General Mkhwanazi.
To this now, forensic investigator Paul O Sullivan has filed a counter-defamation lawsuit of 10 million rand against KwaZulu-Natal Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. This after Mkhwanazi filed a defamation lawsuit of 5 million rand against O Sullivan last month. In court papers before the South Gauteng High Court, O Sullivan argues that he was accused of unspecified crimes by Mkhwanazi and was labelled an agent working for someone else, adding that Mkhwanazi insisted that the country must not sit back and be allowed to be run by him. O Sullivan denies the allegations are unsubstantiated and wants Mkhwanazi's lawsuit to be dismissed with costs. Let's take a listen now to what KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi said about Paul O Sullivan.
The relationship between him and Gerald Spear is something that's an open secret. So could it be that because I mentioned things about his friend that made him to respond like this? I said, this Mr. Paul O Sullivan is working in the security industry as a security industry person. He once worked at the airport in Johannesburg, and after that, he then opened his own company. I know of, maybe I can put it here, commissioners, that, as I said, I've got informers. The Chief of Staff of the Minister of Police, Mr. Nkabinde, used to work for IPIT. He has given me files about the modus operandi in IPIT, and when he used to be there, the role that Mr. Policeman was playing in IPIT. There was a fallout between the two of them. Mr. Paul O Sullivan does not mince his words when he speaks out there. He just speaks openly. So I don't want to debate what he's saying. I want him to come before this commission and come and argue the things that I've presented in these past 3 days, that everything is a lie. And he must tell me why he says it's a lie. Not to come here and accuse me on something that he cannot substantiate. But if he's got evidence of it, he's welcome to come. It's an open commission, this. He must come here and say, this is what Mkhwanazi has done, this is what Mkhwanazi has done, this is what Mkhwanazi has done. For me, what I can tell you, what we have picked up, we are investigating. I became aware of this, I registered a case. The case is being investigated in KZN. I hope he also pick up things against me. He registers a case being investigated, and you see the outcome of it.
And in the most scathing remark yet, O'Sullivan has rejected the image of Mkhwanazi as a heroic whistleblower. He accused him of pretending to expose corruption while avoiding genuine accountability channels. If he had real evidence, O'Sullivan argued, why not go to prosecutors? Why not arrest suspects? Why do it in the media? And he insists that the real evidence will be submitted to the Nhlanhla Commission, the formal judicial inquiry into corruption and political interference in the SAPS. So I've got a few questions about this that I'm going to add in my own little take. So I think I understand General Mkhwanazi's frustration because he made a good go of half a year trying to get answers at why the PKTT was disbanded. And in my own personal opinion, General Mkhwanazi was backed into a corner. The PKTT had been disbanded. He had tried to go to everyone who would listen to him, and they weren't. So the only way that he could do it, in my own opinion, was to call a press conference and expose it to the people of South Africa. Because one of my favorite sayings is, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So Paul O Sullivan claims that he is going in front of Nhlanhla and that he is going to bring receipts. Well, I personally cannot wait. I cannot wait until he goes in front of Nhlanhla, as well as when he goes in front of the parliamentary ad hoc. And what is his explanation for allegedly sending Cendric Nkabende that text while he was testifying? South Africa wants to know what he meant by sending that text, if he in fact did send it. So I wanted to go into everything Paul O Sullivan in this video, but there is simply too much. So this is probably going to be a couple of part series. Members will get access to early episodes, but for the rest of you, I will probably be dropping them every evening this week. So get ready, because we are going to be discussing Paul O Sullivan and Action SA. We are going to be discussing Paul O Sullivan and some Robert McBride. We are also going to be discussing Paul O Sullivan and that meeting that happened that Cedric Nkabende testified about. And we are also going to be discussing a lot more. So get ready, because there is a lot to unpack here.